Call to order the 2400th meeting of the Darien Police Commission. It's a regular meeting. First order of business is acceptance of the minutes of October 15th. Do I have a motion?
Move to approve.
I will second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Chief, are you correspondence?
I have one item of correspondence. It's, I sent a thank you to residents of Park Place, and there's a item in your folder here from Park Place residents. They brought in, thankfully, an obscene amount of cupcakes from Palmer's Exquisite Bakery. They had a missing person at their house, a young person. We located the person in the yard because they were kind of concerned. And somebody walked in, they almost needed a hand truck because there was like 5 or 6 dozen of these unbelievably sized cupcakes that we all enjoyed. So thank you to the family on Park Place for doing that for us.
Indeed. I didn't see any left in there, so I don't know. Captain Marin, see a long list of department activity.
Yeah.
Chief, do you want to start with the thank you, I'm sorry, the employee years of service?
Yeah, I can start with that. As the commission undoubtedly knows, the town recognizes their employees every year for length of service awards. I just want to duly note for the record here at the police commission meeting those employees who have amassed years of service here. Bill Dyman is a lieutenant with 35 years. Our own Jan Lesko, Secretary Emeritus in the back for 30 years. Captain Shredders, who may or may not poke his head in here for 30 years of service. 25 years, Mark Capelli, Detective. George Knapp, our fleet maintainer. For 20 years of service, Officer Mike Cummings, Lieutenant Allison Hedema, Sergeant Kerry Isaac. 15 years of service, Lieutenant Nick Aranzulo, Officer Kathleen Gelino, and Officer Joe Licari. Andrew Mastriani, Sergeant. Stu Schwingerer, School Resource Officer, and Charles Staller, Municipal Animal Control Officer. 10 years of service, Chris Jimenez, Officer, and James Palmieri, Detective Sergeant. So we had quite a few people meeting milestones this year.
Yes, we did.
I would like to thank the Board of Selectmen and the folks over there at the Town Hall who sent over a bag of cookies for each and every employee here in lieu of our luncheon. Little things like that do mean a lot to the officers here in the police department, and we had a nice sign out front as well thanking our employees. So duly noted the support for the Board of Selectmen and the folks at the Town Hall. I appreciate it.
Okay, I'll go ahead with
To Captain Marin.
the activity report. I believe our last meeting was October 15th, though, so this is covering the period from the 15th till now. We've had another couple of busy weeks. On October 16th, a 23-year-old Stanford man was arrested by warrant for DWI stemming from an accident he was involved in where his vehicle left the roadway and struck a fence on Hoyt Street back in August. On October 19th, a 36-year-old Darien woman was arrested for her role in a domestic violence incident. On October 20th, a 50-year-old Stanford man was arrested for evading responsibility and other violations after he left the scene of an accident he caused involving serious injuries. On October 21st, a 20-year-old Norwalk man was arrested for DWI after his vehicle struck a utility pole on Old Kings Highway North at approximately 9 p.m. On October 24th, a 36-year-old Bridgeport woman was arrested by warrant for larceny charges stemming from an incident involving the theft of an engagement ring from an elderly female resident at the Maplewood Senior Living Center in September of this year. On October 25th, a 44-year-old Norwalk man was arrested for DWI shortly after midnight after an officer observed his vehicle being operated erratically. On October 27th, a 19-year-old Greenwich woman was arrested for her role in a domestic violence incident that took place in Darien. The next day, she was arrested again for harassment and violation of protective order. On October 30th, a 20-year-old Darien woman was arrested by warrant for DWI stemming from a rollover crash she was involved in on Canoe Trail in July of this year. October 30th, approximately 9 p.m., a 27-year-old Darien woman was arrested for DWI after being involved in a single-car crash on Middlesex Road. On October 31st, a 22-year-old Bridgeport man, a 21-year-old Bridgeport man, and a 30-year-old New York man turned themselves in once they learned there were warrants for their arrests. All three were charged for larceny and conspiracy to commit larceny for their roles in an early morning mail and package theft incident that took place back in May of this year. November 1st, approximately 1 a.m., a 39-year-old Norwalk woman was arrested for DWI and risk of injury to a minor after her vehicle struck a utility pole on White Street. The woman had her 5-year-old daughter in the vehicle at the time. On November 1st, at approximately 1:30 a.m., a 24-year-old Bridgeport man was arrested for DWI after his vehicle crashed into a stone wall on Hollow Tree Ridge Road. 2 passengers were taken to the hospital for minor injuries in that incident. And in the same time period, we had 37 burglaries of unlocked motor vehicles and 5 stolen vehicles which had the keys or fobs inside. In one of these cases, the victim stated the fob was inside the residence, but in close proximity to where the car was parked. And we've also had 13 motor vehicle accidents in the last 2 weeks, 4 of which involved minor injuries and 1 involved serious but non-life-threatening injuries.
So at the risk of sounding like a broken record, and yet another month, right? We're watching some of the video, surveillance video. This is almost like a game for these kids, right? They're not even making any attempt to kind of hide their face or whatever. They're kind of laughing and joking. And 2 of these cars that were taken with the cars in them were abandoned 2 or 3 streets away. They're just driving them from one spot and leaving it somewhere else. So, again,
And even with a full complement of officers, we clearly can't be everywhere. So it really is incumbent upon the residents to just lock your car. It's so easy. Because we will never be able to be everywhere at once. And Darien clearly the word is out that we are an easy target.
And they are targeting other municipalities, Fairfield
Yep.
County, Westchester County, Litchfield County, you name the county, they're doing it. And they're mostly coming from, some are coming out of Yonkers. A lot of them are coming out of the Waterbury, New Britain, Bridgeport, New Haven. It's almost like a video game. I think that's how I equate it. It's something for them to do.
2 of the stolen cars one was recovered in Manchester, Connecticut, and 1 was recovered in Windsor, which are 2 new towns to us as far as recoveries go.
Interesting. But if it's happening all over, that's it would be nice if the word got out because the residents of Darien locked their cars so that they could easily go to somewhere else where they weren't. So if we could get the residents to lock the cars, they have fertile ground seemingly everywhere. It would be very easy for us to get off their radar screen. But I don't know how to, if anyone can come up with any other communication vehicle, no pun intended, to get the message out, we will take all suggestions to make this.
And before we leave the activity report, I think there is some element of COVID malaise setting in, but as far as the DWIs, for us to have 3 DWI accidents in the span of a couple days is very, very unusual for us, at least as of late. As we go into the holiday season, I know people, because of COVID and contacts, they maybe not want to get in an Uber, but it's still incumbent upon them, please, to get an Uber or a cab and not drive if you had a couple too many holiday cheers. So.
Indeed. Okay, old business, COVID-19 update.
Well, our run of good luck here from when this started has kind of run out. We have 1 officer who has tested positive and is in quarantine. He's in an extended stay hotel to protect his family. So he's doing fairly well, feels a little bit better. We have 2 officers now that are out sick, but awaiting COVID test results. So we went a good long time with very fortunate circumstances, and now maybe, it's not surprising that we've had 1 after this length of time. Fortunate for us, most of our folks are, young and in good shape, and, probably will be able to beat it with some rest. So that's where we're going now. We're still cleaning our cars. Our cars get sanitized. You can see our building is still spotless as it always is. Our people are really good with wearing masks in the building, and the flip side of the coin is policing is an involved, vocation. We deal with people. We just can't say we're not going to deal with anyone. We have to still have conversations, and we still have to put hands on people. So we are doing the best we can under guidelines and circumstances to ensure that our folks are safe.
Okay, anything? Building issues update.
Well, we had yet another backup, and we did have a emergency camera crew come in and camera the lines. So DPW, the fine folks over there, are working diligently with us to try to develop a solution that we don't have any more backups. I think we'll probably have more before we can get it corrected.
So we still haven't identified the problem?
Not exactly. The camera didn't get all the way through the system, but they ripped open some of the outside ceiling to look in there to see if it, what exactly we're looking at. We have a series of pictures that when the building was built, they had a company come in and take thousands and thousands and thousands of pictures and also assist them in looking at it. They did find that it maybe wasn't piped exactly the way they thought it was, or according to, I'm not sure, I leave that to the experts, but they are working on a solution. We did have to rip up the carpet in the ladies' locker room, as I think I told you last time. We put down temporary mats for the ladies until such time as we solve the problem. We'll reinstall new carpet in there to make it to the same spec that it was before. Other thing on building update, we unfortunately had a malfunction of our generator. The boards, some type of computer board in our gigantic generator out there that powers the whole building went south. And that was $3,500 for the computer board that we had to replace under an emergency. It wouldn't run without it, or wouldn't run properly without it, so that has been repaired.
And we know that failed because it runs a test every week or so?
Yeah, that's how we found out it wasn't working properly. It started the test and it never went off. And that's how we found out that the computer wasn't running it correctly, so. The generator's been pretty good. It runs every Tuesday on a test, 52 weeks a year. And, probably ran the longest through Sandy. And I think the tank allows us to run for like a week without, so we can run it a good long time. It's been a pretty good workhorse, I think, for us, but nobody wants to spend $3,500 on a replacement part, but the other option is that our lights go dark, which we can't have either, so.
No.
That's it for building update.
Any other old business? Leads us to new business, approval of our 2021 Police Commission meetings calendar. I believe they are still every other Thursday at 4 o'clock. Does that still work for?
Yeah, it's perfect. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, the first and third.
First and third Thursday at 4 o'clock here. I will sign that for my Jan. Do I need to sign both of these?
No, one's just a copy. I think the original, you just put in for your signature.
Okay. Personnel transfers.
Well, we were very, very fortunate this week to move, actually last week, or maybe early this week, I'm losing track now, Merzio Vigil to our detective division. He's been an excellent employee here for, I think he was on the list. He's been here 15 or so years, and it wasn't, got it last year. We've invested a goodly amount of training effort with Mo Vigil. He's really a solid officer. He's part of our technical investigation unit, which is overseen by the state's attorney's office. So he works in a computer lab a couple times a month doing computer-related crimes of all type, right? There's not too many crimes left that don't somehow involve a computer. But he has received, I think, it's like 10 or 12 weeks of extensive training out in Alabama. The federal government picks up the tab for this training, and it's like a month at a time. It's really extensive computer forensic training where, you're chasing after the guys on the dark web or doing things that, most people who run computers don't quite understand. It's a perfect fit for him in there. He's going to be doing general detective duties. He's going to be doing some youth detective duties, and he will be able to continue on with the computer forensics. You've heard me say before, the support that we get from the police commission and from the town for training of our officers to ensure that they receive the best practice training available pays dividends for us, especially somebody like Mo Vigil, who's involved in this regional organization, supporting Darien and showing the folks in other departments what we can do. And I've heard from numerous people involved in that technical investigation unit and from the Chief State's Attorney's Office himself, what an asset this officer is to our police department. So duly noted. I'm more than happy to present him with a detective's badge, which is, as you know, is an appointment. It's not a promotion. It's kind of a transfer, but it's you get a little nicer badge, and he's going to do a fine job for us. So I'm very happy to make that transfer.
We are lucky to have him. Okay. Drive-by Santa event sponsored by the fire departments.
I had the occasion this week to meet with Mike Beatty in the Rowan Fire Department, and in lieu of all the COVID restrictions this year, it's pretty clear that the typical Santa visiting parties and events around town that normally would take place are not going to be taking place. So as an alternative, they're looking to seek approvals, and they started with us, and they want to follow the proper protocols after our discussion. But on Sunday, December 6th, they were hoping that they could utilize the Darien High School between 2 p.m. and 5 p.m. to have some type of a drive-by event where kids could come by, see Santa, maybe take a picture of Santa, but don't exit the vehicle, and have the opportunity to donate a toy to either, let's see here, Toys for Tots or the Food Pantry of Darien. They have a system that they're planning on using where they'd have a designated area to receive a greeting from Santa. No one will be allowed to exit their vehicles, and they will have a contactless collection point between the entry to DHS property and the designated Santa area. I think they were explaining it's still in development, but some type of a process where they use a cart that gets pushed up to the car, the gift donation gets placed in the cart, and they move on their way. They wanted to know what type of impact that we thought it might have as far as traffic goes. But I think on a Sunday, first week of December, for the period, the 3 hours that they're looking at, I don't think that they could possibly have a backup that would leave the campus there. It's a first-time event. They plan on following all the restrictions in the governor's guidelines. When I explained to them, by that point, they could be changed. But that's what they're seeking to sponsor.
It's our one school that does have sufficient queuing.
I was just going to say, as long as we have officers and you can wrap them around every which way, then I can't. It would be something if we exceeded the high school.
They're asking for our assistance with it, but they want to have people enter through High School Lane, go by the drive-by point, and then exit through either Nutmeg or Norotan.
I think I don't have any issue with it. I can't imagine. They obviously have to go through the board that and do whatever they have to do with that, but I don't think it should be a traffic issue. Like I said, if they get that big a turnout, good for them. It's more toys, but I think we could probably handle it. Which brings us to traffic issues.
Yeah. Our school traffic, you probably saw the press release that Captain Marin put out. We did have a meeting with the first selectman and the school superintendent, and we hashed out what we thought we could do. And this is my magic wand again is out of batteries. I would love to have a solution other than we're asking people to stay away from schools at drop-off and pickup time if they don't have any school-related business. I know what I would be doing if I was, had to go up Mansfield Avenue after the first or maybe second time and I didn't have anything to do with Royal or Oxford School. I would be finding an alternate route. There's just very problematic for Royal School. There's no queuing. And Oxford School, a little bit better, but still problematic. We put out our press release on it. Our officers are there unless otherwise detailed, and I've asked them time and time again, and I think they're being as compliant as they can to jump out and try to help. That's really what we can do at this point, is we're trying to help. Very clear that if this was a private event or this was non-emergency construction, we would tell them, no, you can't do this day after day, but we're talking about schools. And the thing is, right, I think the first selectman and I had the conversation, let's keep it in perspective as far as I'm concerned. We're talking about traffic, right? It's problematic for us, but again, at the end of the day, it's traffic that we're trying to address the best we can. So.
You guys go there. Is it gotten better, worse? Better.
It's another one of those things that if someone out there has something that we're not seeing, I won't be proud. Bring it on, and we'll look at it.
Yeah. No, I think Board of Ed, everybody, but I haven't gotten personally any communications on it, and anecdotally it seems to be getting better. So either we're managing expectations or people are figuring out how to drop off and pick up slightly quicker, but we will monitor it because it's not going to get better, I think, as the weather gets colder, and so I don't think it's going away. Anything else traffic related? Good.
I think the DPW is going to try to get the school markings down by Henley School. Those markings were promised to us by the state DOT at least 3 years ago, and the state did not install them. So since we, as the town, agreed to maintain them in perpetuity anyway, I just asked the DPW to go ahead and please install the roadway markings that say school ahead upon request from a resident. Sometimes I get a little bit embarrassed when I tell a resident that something is approved and it doesn't get done in any kind of timely fashion. I don't want to throw the state under the bus, but I think 2 or 3 years of waiting is sufficient to get those markings in. So hopefully before it gets cold, they will get them in.
Okay.
And those markings are in both direction of the post road?
Correct.
Yeah.
Okay. Which brings us to our last agenda item, which is joint discussion with people on TV cannot see, but we have the Board of Selectmen who have joined us today for a discussion on some items that they wanted to chat about. And hopefully, Jamie, do you have anything you want to say to start us off, or I have?
Thank you, Commissioner Hubbard and everybody. We really appreciate being your guests here today. I hope that this is the first of several times that we can get together throughout the year to have good communication with the Police Commission. This meeting was facilitated by, as we all know, the new legislation in Hartford around the Police Accountability Bill. That raised a lot of questions among the members of my board and the community. And so we're grateful for the opportunity to be here today to allow the Board of Selectmen to ask questions of you. Hopefully you'll be able to answer most of them. And to really just, springboard an open dialogue with you on this issue and other issues that might come to mind while we're having our talk. So thank you for having us.
We are certainly glad you're here. I do want to say, I don't know whether for the record or as we start, well, this is the first time in a while I think we've met as a full commission and full Board of Selectmen. I do want to highlight that lots of coordination has happened this year outside of these police commission meetings. I think it's safe to say that 2020 has brought a whole set of issues that we didn't necessarily anticipate. But that being said, I think I believe we've worked coordinated outreach. We've had meetings with individuals and groups, hopefully fully addressing the issues that our citizens have had this year. And I've been on the commission for 8 years, and I don't think I've ever worked as closely with the Board of Selectmen as I have this year. I think we've really worked together, and I appreciate the support and teamwork because it's really been quite a year. So you're welcome to come whenever. Our meetings are open, but we also welcome all of the interaction we've had with you this year outside of these kind of official meetings. It's really, we've had to all pull together to deal with lots of things we never thought we'd have to deal with. So with that, we did get some questions ahead of time, so if you don't mind, if we could go through those, feel free to, it's obviously a dialogue, there's nothing, but I thought that would at least we'd at least get those off the table because we know those are questions that are on the table, and then we can go from there if that's okay with everybody. And going to start, but I'm planning on not doing all the talking, so we will throw it to the other commissioners, and I know Don will have to weigh in on certain things that he is more qualified. The first was about the Police Accountability Act and specific changes that need to occur. One of them was hiring. The Darien Police Department, luckily, we have a thorough process. It's up on the website now. I won't go through the written examination, the physical, we have a very robust process. I don't think we have any plans to make any major changes to the hiring process. We wait to see. I think we are a very attractive place to work. I think hopefully we still continue to attract high-level candidates. We right now are at full complement. So that's good. So right now, hiring, it's a concern, but it's not a top concern. I think Darien still is a desirable place to work, and hopefully we will continue to see the candidates. Training, we're clearly monitoring closely all of the requirements. I don't know, Don, there's definitely things that are in the future that are going to take effect, but is there anything right now that we're having to do that you want to elaborate on?
Well, a couple things. There was a public act in 2019 that came out of what was called the Time's Up movement, and I'm not sure how it kind of got to this point without us knowing about it, but there's mandatory now domestic violence training that officers have to complete now by November 19th. Be compliant with state statutes. So right now, that's a 2-hour block online that all our officers have to do. A lot of our training that we typically do in person, like our legal update that we do every February, because of COVID, there's only one way to do it this year, and that's online. And that's a lot of training you can do online, but legal update training, when you have an attorney who's a subject matter expert in the room and you can bounce questions off, I'm quickly found out I'd like to get back to in-person training at some point in my career, but right now a lot of it's online. Our mandatory review training, which is every 3 years, 60 hours, I think the movement on that is to make that totally online. Well, right now officers go to Bridgeport or officers go to Danbury and West Con when they're off for this winter break, and there's 300, 400 police officers in an auditorium getting training. Well, that can't happen either. So that training moving forward may be going online as well. A lot of training, people have taken this option now to say, well, maybe we can do this online. You don't have to send people an hour each way to get somewhere to get their training. Even the online, the Recruit Academy right now, which started virtually, it's a mixed bag as of right now as to how that's going to shake out, right? Recruit Academy for 6 months online and not having interaction with instructors and other officers, that's a wait and see for me. That's a wait and see to see how that shakes out. Some things, obviously, range training, defensive tactics, you can't do that online. You have to get, in the facility at some point.
Do we have any, I know the accreditation is a big item that was in the Police Accountability Act. Do we have any visibility? I mean, we've talked to selectmen about the CALIA and what that would mean if that remains in the bill, it's not modified. Do you want to talk about that for a second?
The basic thrust of that right now from either the CPCA or the Training Associations is kind of take a wait and see if that's going to be amended. My gut feeling is that it will be, and that the CALIA mandate will probably get dialed back, but accreditation for police departments, I think, will remain a mandate in the state of Connecticut.
Well, we don't mind that because we're accredited.
We don't mind.
The CALIA is what would send us to a different level and require additional staffing.
CALIA is a national certification. It stands for Commission on Accreditation for Law Enforcement Agencies, so it's separate from Connecticut.
I do have a package almost ready for the commission explaining the different tiers of Connecticut accreditation and a contrast with the CALIA accreditation process. So it's going to be another one of these, hope you don't have anything to do on Friday night type 125-page documents that you can take a look at, but it does Lieutenant White kind of got that together for me. I'm still reviewing it, but it does spell out the differences and shows the different standards and to what standard you have to meet the standard. So we'll get that to you in short order, so further review.
And the mandatory behavioral health assessments, that still remains? And
I don't think that's going anywhere. I think the mandatory behavioral health analysis, 5-year increments, and the drug screen for all police officers in the state of Connecticut, I will say that that's going to absolutely remain. How it is exactly rolled out, I still don't have a definitive answer. Mental health practitioners in the field here that I know tell me that what is required by the statute, that you have a mental health exam every 5 years as a police officer, has to be right now by statute, has to be by a board-certified psychologist or psychiatrist who is specializing or trained in PTSD. Now, our practitioners tell me quite candidly that less than 5% of mental health practitioners in the United States are board certified. That's just board certification, not even with a specialization in PTSD. So again, as written, there's going to be very few practitioners that are going to be able to meet that standard. So where...
And they come at a cost. I mean, if I'm looking at the questions, and, obviously, both of those things will have budget implications because they have to be paid for.
We're crafting our budget now based on our fact of what we pay for our entry-level officer psychological tests with a practitioner. I think we pay $400. I mean, we're going to budget $500. It's kind of a guess. I'm not sure when this provider comes down, they might be able to name their own price in this market. I don't know how that's going to work out, but we have to put a number in our budget at any rate. The urinalysis and the drug screen, that's pretty much a known cost. A 10-panel drug screen, like for DOT style, it's like $50. But how we're going to implement it is a little bit different, right? DPW, who's had that in there forever, well, they work during the day, right? I'm not sure how we're going to test officers that work midnights, if there's going to be a facility open, but again, we're going to work on it. We'll put a number in the budget. I have absolutely no doubt in my mind, urinalysis testing and drug testing, that we're going to have no issues with our folks here as far as being able to meet that standard.
And Chief, the combined number is around, not to quote us right now, around $5,500 or so per annum. Minimum for both those mandatory requirements.
Yeah, and I think if we had to, probably about $5,500. Again, I talked to one of my colleagues who had an officer in their department had to have a fitness for duty mental health exam, and that was $4,200. Now, I don't know how extensive that was. So again, it's kind of, until we can get this, find out a practitioner who's going to come in and give us a request for proposal and come in, we'll put a number on, but we might be off and we may have to adjust it moving forward.
Okay.
I'm sorry, could you elaborate? You're getting an RFP for what? I'm sorry?
Well, if we need to test officers, right, we would have to go out to a practitioner and say, the town of Darien needs this for this amount of officers. What is the price going to be for this testing? I'm not sure it's going to be covered by insurance. That part of it's not really clear either. But when we have identified mental health practitioners who can fulfill this obligation under statute, right, we're going to do our due diligence and find out, what that cost is going to be, so we can build it into our budget every year.
Any other questions on the police account? I was going to move on to civilian dispatch, but I don't want to move too quickly.
I just have one comment, and you've sort of been touching upon it here, is that when you do come to us with the budget, it would be helpful personally if you could identify those items which are results of this bill.
Guaranteed they'll have their own line item with a
However you want to handle it, but just so we can tease it out and it's identified for us, for the public, and if it doesn't pass, that we know where you are on that. Thank you.
Awesome.
Anything else? Questions?
No, that's a good point. I'm sure there are many especially.
Yeah, you're talking about it here, but just so it's formalized when the budget is presented.
There's some unknown costs that we may never know until 5 or 10 years down the road. If an officer somehow 15 years into his career, and now is not fit for duty, how do you make him fit for duty, him or her, or what happens to that officer? So that's going to be probably future administrations are going to have to deal with the things that are happening now.
We're talking specifically Darien, but if you think about our neighbors, Stafford, Norwalk, much larger police departments, it's really going to cost them, and the city isn't, those cities aren't as well-funded as Darien, so, something to think about as well.
Yeah, we have to by statute test 10 because we have 51 sworn officers. If you had 400 sworn officers, it's going to be a major expense for some of these departments.
Okay. I was hoping, Chief, you would not do all the talking, but civilian dispatch, I think, is probably best if you kick off answering, I think, what would the question about redeployment. Where are we in?
Well, we're about 12 years down the road for civilian dispatch, so I don't think anyone in the room here has any total unfamiliarity with the civilian dispatch system. This is the third administration of the police department that has been trying to move this through the pipeline. I certainly still believe this was under Chief Lovello who started this initial plan. I still, as I said here today, think it's a sound plan. I think it is the proper way to deploy personnel, that we don't have police officers working dispatch. We're one of the few departments that do that. How we are going to look on the other side, it's not an XY equation where I can give the answer is going to be Z. Some of it involves contractual negotiations, which we're going to be in contract negotiations with the Police Association early in 2022, because I think the contract expires in July of 2022. But we were able to carve out our school resource officer out of our existing complement of folks to put them at Middlesex Middle School. It just opens up, civilian dispatch. It opens up the ability to move folks into different type of opportunities, whether that's a 2-year commitment to an FBI task force or a narcotics task force or a joint terrorist task force, work on a regional or East Coast level, whether it's assigning to someone like Maurizio Vigil to a technical investigation unit doing those investigations here without having to backfill his position. A lot of that, we don't have a lot of extra folks. In my 37 years here, we increased sworn headcount by 1 in 37 years. There's a lot of opportunities. The traffic division, traffic is kind of usually, COVID's a little bit different, but it's our number one complaint. Right now, we have one officer doing everything. He does the enforcement, he meets with residents, he puts out the bollards, he puts out the speed sentries that you see. He's kind of a one-armed paper hanger, and he gets it done. For quite some time, we had 2 officers in the traffic squad, but due to shortages over the last 5-6 years, we've been pretty much running with 1 in the traffic division. I could certainly have at least 2, or if not 3. And my thinking there would be that officer would not, they would be doing what they're doing now and more. They would be taking on some of the legal traffic authority roles along with Captain Shredder's, what I used to do, as an element of succession planning. When Kate Bush and I have conversations, it's succession planning, everyone realizes has to be a major part of what we do here. You see, my hair is gray. Jerry's is not, but he's been here, he's been here quite a long time as well. Bob Shredders has been here a long time. As I've told this commission, and I believe I've told the selectmen, one of my main goals here is succession planning and getting the next generations of officers ready. And that, sometimes you want to put somebody, okay, I want to take you out of patrol here, and I want to give you to Mike DeSantos in the records division for 30 days. So if Mike goes out with COVID, I have somebody who can really know the ins and outs of the law enforcement side of the job and records, not the accounts payable or even the processing of evidence, but that kind of thing. Assign somebody to the training lieutenant for a month or 60 days so they can doing it piecemeal, 1 time here or 2 hours here. I really want to make sure that the department is well positioned to keep moving forward when we pass the torch.
Jamie, do you have a question?
Yes. So the civilian dispatch, knowing that it began under Chief Lovello, was always positioned as you know, if we could fully civilianize the dispatch, it gives us the opportunities that the chief was just talking about redeployment, you know, kind of reimagining how you can manage in a different, better way here. That redeployment plan was really foundational to the approvals for, you know, the Board of Selectmen approvals and the Board of Finance approvals. So can you just kind of break it down for us today? Am I hearing that we won't finish the civilian dispatch plan until we can address the contract issues in 2022? You know, I'm trying to understand.
No, that wouldn't be the plan. My thought there, the idea behind that is we have to get this plan in place and get it fully vetted. That's also going to involve some contract negotiations for the dispatchers. It's because if we have a civilian dispatch system, 2 dispatchers around the clock, that means there has to be 2 dispatchers there around the clock. That's going to take some contractual negotiations as far as order backs or order to remain to ensure that that is staffed. From where I sit, we have to ensure that that program is, you know, embedded and in place and running properly, and that opens up our avenues for contractual negotiations with the union as far as different jobs or a different amount of personnel as the commission sees fit. I know there was never any specific discussion about, you know, how many officers we would have here, but I do know that the amount of officers that we have here is effectively the same as when I started, are doing exponentially more training and more activities that they have to complete that we never had to do. We didn't have to do 1/10 of the thing that the officers have to do now just for training certification purposes. We just didn't do it. We went out with a clipboard and a pen. You know, there's basically no radios. Their officers are charged with doing a lot more than we did back in the day.
I agree. I recognize that, and all the work that you do now in responding to domestic events that, you know, was really less of a problem 10 years ago. So can you give us maybe a schedule, a glide path, if you will, on finishing up the plan and what the next steps are?
Well, I would think that if the plan was funded and we had the wherewithal to put civilian dispatch in on the midnight tour starting July 1st of 2021, well, I think if it was approved in the budget process, we could probably have staff ready to go on or about July 1st, 2021. I would want to see that program going at least for 6 months to ensure that it's functioning properly. Right now, we have static staffing, right? We staff at a full complement of patrol officers. It's staffed statically 24 hours a day, 365 days a year. That's an outdated method of staffing, where you start with 8 people working every shift. Now that goes back to the 50s here. I'm just not so sure that on some shifts we can deploy folks differently, and some of that is contractual. Right now, you have to have 6 sworn police officers working every shift, except for there's a couple carve-out exceptions, but that's the bulk of our personnel is in the patrol division, in the field services division. Right now, you have to have 6 working at every tour. So if you don't have 6, you have to backfill and you have to pay overtime, whether it's voluntary or involuntary. You have to have 6 folks. I think there's some room there to work on a better staffing model.
So what I'm hearing is, correct me if I'm wrong, is that ideally, and you'll be bringing forward a request for the midnight civilian dispatch in your budget proposal for the coming budget. Then you'd like to see how that works out. If everybody agrees and that gets funded, you'd like to see how that works out for 6 months. And then be prepared to attempt to negotiate, no guarantees, attempt to negotiate changes that would be needed in the collective bargaining in 2022.
I don't claim to be any fantastic bargainer, but I think that there's ample opportunity and attractive opportunity for rank and file officers here on a negotiation to perhaps have opportunities that we don't have right now.
But no guarantee.
That benefit both the officer and the town. Right? Clearly, we're not going to have any opportunities that are not beneficial to the town. Right? We're not going to be putting an officer on, surfboard checking. We've got really smart folks that work in this agency, and I'm confident that we can bring forth a plan with the commission that brings value added to the town service.
Thank you. Questions on facilities?
I'll boil it down. Here's what I'm struggling with. The program has been in place for 12 years. It's partially staffed at this current time. I still can't tell. I haven't seen any metric by which we are measuring if the program is functioning properly, how we're going to determine if it's successful in meeting its goals, and we're asking for another expenditure that last year in the budget was $300,000 to perpetuity. I believe very fundamentally in the concept of that which gets measured, gets managed, and right now, the only measurement criteria that I have heard is there is a promise that we can redeploy officers. We've had officers and dispatchers for how many years? Can you tell me on the shifts where the officers and the dispatchers were working concurrently, what did the two officers do who would have been on dispatch? What did they do instead?
Well, there was never two officers on dispatch.
Well, pardon me if I have the numbers wrong. My basic fundamental thing is I don't see or understand how to measure if the program is working, what its success criteria are, and we've already made a big investment in the program. There ought to be some way to evaluate the success of the program to date, to evaluate if we're willing to invest another $300,000 to perpetuity.
Just one clarification. We haven't had civilian dispatch for 12 years.
No. We asked for it 12 years ago.
Well, I'm sorry. I was repeating what the chief mentioned. So I
First asked for it 12 years ago, and we got it, I don't know, with one,
Yeah, I was gonna
4 years
say.
ago?
Yeah.
4 thereabouts?
Well, read the point, we had the two SROs.
I was going to say, the SRO,
That's a huge success, the SROs.
the SRO at Middlesex is a direct result.
We wouldn't have been able to staff the SRO at Middlesex out of our existing complement of people unless we were going to backfill on overtime if we're going to take that. And there are some police departments in the state of Connecticut who build their model, their staffing model, on that very premise. Newington PD was one of them. Their model was based on that if you were off on the weekend, you were guaranteed to get ordered to at least one shift. So you either picked the shift that was least intrusive to your weekend, or you spun the wheel and you were going to get ordered to one shift. I'm not particularly liking that staffing model where you get one weekend off in 3 and you know you're going to get ordered back to work on one of those shifts over the weekend. I'd rather not have a overtime staffing model.
Well, can I suggest, because obviously we're not going to come up with the metrics and be able to fill them in right here, but clearly going into the budget or if we're going to ask for this, we will put some meat on the bones and hopefully communicate with you of what metrics you are looking for and
whatever you have to show how, since we've had dispatchers
Totally
on
hear
the
you.
desk, I'm assuming that we still have those officers doing something during that time period. What were they doing?
And
It can be that simple, right? I mean, it doesn't have to be,
Yeah, no, I-
super complicated. And I personally don't need a plan that says, going forward, we're absolutely going to do this, right? Because to the chief's point, that eliminates any flexibility in negotiations
yeah.
subsequently, right? So we don't want to do that. But,
This summer alone, as certainly a provable metric, we were able to staff the Marine Division ample hours without having to backfill the officers we were pulling out of the field services division, because we knew this year was going to be a heavy boating season, and we were able to staff it at no additional expenditure on a lot of days, because that person, like if we had 7 people scheduled to work that shift, we could pull someone from that shift to work the Marine Division on regular duty rather than on overtime.
And that's perfect. That's exactly the kind of thing I'm thinking of.
We will, duly noted, and we will,
Some departments around us have full-time, around the year, Marine divisions. And I don't think we need that, but we did want it staffed over the summer, and we were, I think, pretty effective at it this summer.
I personally like the idea of having more staff on the Marine Division during the summer, because having been out there and seen some of the silliness that occurs in Long Island Sound when you're out boating on the weekends, or even during the week sometimes, it gets pretty...
I did it
This
for
summer was-
I did it for 6 years, and people thought it's great duty. It's everyone else is having fun, but the officers are not having all that much fun.
Ruining other people.
Yeah, we try not to, but we just try to keep it safe out.
no, this summer, it'd be interesting to see what the metrics were, because it was busy out there.
I guess you could look at it in the negative too, like what
Correct.
what can't you do? What would, I'm making this up.
Yeah.
But, is it like coffee with a cop? Would you not be able to do coffee with a cop if you didn't have civilians on the dispatch desk? So
We'll come at it
right.
both ways.
Thank you.
I think there's also another one that is the specialized credentials and experience that those dispatchers actually bring to our dispatch center too.
As professional telecommunications.
Right, as the nature of the job has changed, as you had shared, that's important. The other thing I would, as we're looking at it more in hindsight and perspective as to how have the addition of these dispatchers enhanced the operation of the force, but where do you see this going? And let's look forward to support the addition of another civilian. We also need that forward-looking, your best guess at this point, because if we're going to, again, we're getting the budget a little bit early here, but we need to be able to justify it and then see it through the Board of Finance and ultimately the RTM. So I think it's important we see that information also.
Totally got it.
I'll feed you one other thing that I think I believe in my head supports the argument as well. I'm a big believer in any business situation that you try to lower the cost per unit of output, and to the extent that there is any cost differential to having a sworn officer versus a trained civilian dispatcher, that sort of shows that the cost for the aggregate dispatch function as a whole is less expensive through having trained professional dispatchers than it would be to have sworn officers. I think that supports the argument too.
No argument there.
Appreciate all of it.
Just one more on when I'm thinking about the civilian dispatch. Part and parcel of the civilian dispatch program coming back, in my mind, as I sit here today, is that we are bringing fire dispatch back in-house. There is no doubt in my mind that our trained professional civilian dispatchers can handle the 7 or 8 calls on a busy day for the fire department to any acceptable national fire dispatch standard. If we have civilian dispatchers on our desk and they can't handle a fire dispatch call to the standard the fire department expects, then we have a dispatch problem. We have a problem. There's no doubt in my mind our dispatchers can handle that.
And do we pay CMed additional money to handle those fire calls?
It's in the $50,000 to $60,000 range.
Have there already been any discussions with the firehouses or?
Yes, and I have a very good working relationship with pretty much everyone in the fire department. And I think if they hear me say that I will give them my word that their fire dispatch will be to their expectation, it will be. Now, quite frankly, over the course of my career here, a lot of the firemen that I'm friendly with loved it when certain people were on the desk because they were getting the standard that they expected.
Right.
They didn't like it when other people were on the desk because they weren't getting, and now this is Officer Jones who gets tossed on the desk and he doesn't want to be there one night a month, right? It's 3 o'clock in the morning, you may not get the cheeriest voice that you think you're expecting. Our dispatchers will perform to that standard without any doubt in my mind.
Excellent. I'm going to move on so that we are not here until, the question on traffic stops, Brent, can
You want me to touch upon that?
somebody besides me.
I think more broadly, just to make
They did.
to frame it, right, is when we interviewed Kevin and Brent, there was some discussion about.
Excuse me, may I stop? That was done in executive session, so I think we need to be very careful as to what we share and not share there.
All right.
I'm sorry, I don't mean to
No,
stop
okay,
it, but
let me phrase it differently.
Okay, thank you.
There have been conversations periodically about the perception that Darien is not the most welcoming to minorities, right? And Kevin mentioned, or educated me, that every time that there's an interaction with the police, there is some level of documentation. And I don't know what kind of documentation we have, but for some reason, I don't know where that impression comes from, but if there is any of that data that can be harnessed to correct the misimpression, or to tamp it down, or to change it, I mostly wanted to stimulate a conversation around that idea, because we want people to feel like everybody's welcome in town, because I think all of us walking around feel that way.
Yeah. So in terms of that, there is a called agency or study that's conducted each year on, and all the Connecticut municipalities report certain data on traffic stops to this, it's called the Institute for Municipal and Regional Policy, IMPR, and it's largely a study that's done, again, on an annual basis through the Central Connecticut State University. So that's all public information. I can actually send you an email as well, just with the data that you're looking for. So, each year we do look at that data, review the data. In years past, we have met with the IMPR. I was not part of the commission at that point in time. But really what it comes down to is what is the racial profile of people that, you're stopping. This is a large part of what they focus on relative to the demographics of your town. So with Darien in particular, and by the way, I'll just be very clear, we've never been accused of or ever been, of any wrongdoing there or anything whatsoever. I'm going to get into, what data we actually report as well for each traffic stop. But really what you have to take a look at is what is the driving population of Darien? We know the demographics of Darien. I don't know what we're at now, 22,000 or so residents in that neighborhood, largely, white, right, and other demographics here. So when you look at it, we're surrounded, as you know very well. Norwalk, I think, is the 6th largest city in Connecticut. Don't quote me on that. Stanford, probably top 3 within Connecticut. So the driving the population there combined is, you're talking 200,000, right? On top of 22,000 here in Darien, you have New Canaan as well, which is similar. So I think what you have to do is you have to look at, what is that real estimated driving population that comes through Darien. So that also includes I-95, right, which goes right through the heart of Darien, the Post Road, which goes right through the heart of Darien as well. So that's the data that the IMPR, I think when we met with them, Chief, I was not here at the time, they agreed, those are additional statistics that they need to take into account. On your point, David, so some of the things, I'm not going to read it all off to you here, and I can send you, the commission will send you an email on this if you want, but there's about 19 distinct general categories that we report. It's race of the operator, gender of the operator, age, date of birth of the operator, ethnicity of the operator, and some of that is the, what the officer perceives to be the race, ethnicity, et cetera, of that operator. So we report a whole bunch of data here. Again, I have about 19 different bullet points here that we report to the, state of Connecticut for each traffic stop.
Every traffic stop.
And importantly, we will get the 2019 data, I believe, shortly. I don't think we expect any concerns to come from that. We can share that with the selectmen as well.
That's great, thank you. I'll just, please put your heads together. Obviously, we all want people to think of Darien as a welcoming community, right? So if you can, that was the whole point of these comments, was to sort of stimulate that conversation, see if there's any way for us as a group, right, to make people feel like Darien is welcome to all.
And that also, just briefly, that also goes into training, right? And you look at this police accountability bill and, other things that are being suggested, body cams, cams on the dashboard of police cars. We've had that in place for many, many years now. So I think we've been well ahead of that, for some time. Do you want to add anything to that, Chief? Or?
Just a couple points. On the again, back in the dark ages, I can't see in the back, but in the dark ages, when we went out with our pad and pencil and pen, right, there was no record of a traffic stop ever occurring. Unless you gave someone a written warning or you gave them a ticket, there was no record of who you stopped, what you stopped them for, what their age was, their demographic, there was nothing. So we've come a long way with transparency about stopping folks, right? It is just like computers are involved in a lot of criminal activity, vehicles are usually somehow connected to some criminal activity. So for having a reputation of having a strong motor vehicle enforcement in your town, which when I started driving at age 16, you knew that if you came through Darien, you had to obey the law. I'm not going to apologize for still having that reputation, that if you come here and you're driving too fast, or you have equipment violations, or you're driving recklessly, or even if you're on the phone, that there's a possibility you're going to get stopped. And I think our constituency expects us to do that. In other municipalities and others, not other municipalities in Connecticut, but other municipalities and states, they're now doing away with the opportunity for the officer to stop anybody for an equipment violation. State of Virginia, and I think it passed, that they can't stop someone for not having their headlights on. Well,
At night.
At night. Well, we don't want to go there, right? We don't want to go to the point that we're not going to let somebody drive by without their headlights on at 2 o'clock in the morning. Again, I've been here a long time, and to 2 points, that we don't racially profiling anyone. And I can tell you from my personal experience with thousands and thousands and thousands of traffic stops, that was my full-time job for 6 or 7 years here, basically was motor vehicle enforcement, that I would estimate 7 out of 10, if not better, I had no idea anything about that operator before I walked up to the window. Whether or not they were male or female, whether they were black and white. Sometimes you can't even tell if there's 2 people in the car, 4 people in the car. So that's my experience. Clearly, you know, Darien has a reputation of being elitist. Well, I wasn't born and raised here, but I've been here my whole life. My dad worked here, and I've worked here for many, many years. That is not true, and I tell that to people all the time. That's not my experience. That is a preconceived notion or perception from, maybe it was in the 40s and 50s and 60s. That's not the Darien that I know, and that I've been here for 37 years. The only time you ever run into somebody that might be a little whatever, maybe they had a couple, right? But the people here are good people. They treat people with respect. Our cops treat people with respect. We do. Now with the transparency of body cameras, if anyone wants to come in and say, I think I was profiled, or I think I was mistreated by the officer was rude, or let's go to the videotape. And that's what we do.
Please come in.
And very rarely do we find out that the officer performed anything but professionally. And if they do, we address it. Like I always say, we own it, and we fix it, and we move on. But that's not my experience here, not with the residents in the town, and certainly not with the police department. But again, we do have a strong reputation of motor vehicle enforcement. I think that's a good thing for us.
I think the citizens are encouraged that, so.
Let's hope.
David, I'll say one other thing, and there's been a lot of debate both in the law enforcement and academic and even the data communities about some of the assumptions that you have to make when you're using a census-based population to calculate some of the data that they put out, and you get this kind of estimated driving population, and then so there's a number of assumptions that have to come into that under that based on census data. I think there's a couple of things, and we spoke about this before, is that one of the things that we're looking to do is not use that census-based data population to estimate, but actually get some real data, RE, car crashes in town, right? So there's a lot of assumptions coming in to populate this data. We want to get real data, like not assumptions. So if you think that a car crash or a car accident is the police department, in terms of the police department's interaction with that, there isn't any, right? It's essentially a random occurrence happening in different parts of the town. So if we can get the data of those parties involved, and and use the same criteria we gather on a traffic stop, we gather that same data for a random occurrence vis-a-vis the police department on those traffic stops, we can have real observational data to then bounce our other data points on, because again, it's a lot of that's estimates, and it's a lot of it's census-based. Problem is, like the 2020 census, there's going to be a lot of, there's going to be some inherent imperfections on the 2020 census data because of the pandemic, right? Sure. So I'm really excited to start using some of that real observational data in town rather than some estimates to base our traffic stop and to benchmark that off versus some kind of estimates that a lot of people don't agree with and don't necessarily apply to towns. Does that am I making sense? Yeah.
Just a question on that. Have you looked at the IMPR annual study data, not on a Darien population specific basis, but against a regional population demographic?
I've looked at it at both Darien, peers, and regional, yes. Okay.
And I would be curious to see how our traffic stops in Darien compare to the regional population, because I think that's really the population of people that traverse our roadways. Certainly.
And I think you see some consistencies across the state in some municipalities that are similar to ours. Hartford versus West Hartford, or Rocky Hill, or Trumbull compared to Bridgeport and Stratford. It's not exact apples to apples, but you see a similar type report. Now, the two folks that I deal with as far as data collection, as far as traffic stops, I hold them both in extremely high regard. They're both, in my mind, subject matter experts in law enforcement, and they are diametrically opposed on which method we should be collecting this data. So I break bread with both of them. I balance my checkbook. That's about as much data as I can. We really don't have the answers, but I think this is a step forward.
I think it really is an exciting step forward.
If the state says that they would estimate our estimated driving population for stopping minorities at 13% based on our residency, and ours is 20%, I don't know what it is, but just I don't find that to be a huge abnormality, knowing what I know about driving population that I have watched for 37 years. I think our driving population is certainly more diverse than the academics are pulling this data out. And they listen to us when we say that. They don't disagree that we have I-95, we have Metro North, we have US 1, we have state routes 106, 124, 136. They're not saying that we're out in left field. We don't believe you. They say we understand your position.
David, lastly, if anybody has that concern, we would proactively meet with them as well. And we did meet with a small group here in town. Actually, Jamie helped coordinate that meeting. They asked us about this topic. We proactively addressed it with them, and I think we changed the perception coming into that meeting. So, and we'll continue to do that.
And we met with them multiple times, and one of the upsides of, I think, kind of a lot of the things we've dealt with this year is we've interacted with a lot of people we probably hadn't in the past, and I think it went a long way to moving the needle, and hopefully we'll continue to do so in the future.
May I ask more about the IMPR? Is that information online?
It is, yeah. I'll send you a link so you don't have to dig it up. Yeah.
And is it sorted to that point where you can look at regionally? Does it give you that ability to interface?
There's a high-level snapshot, yeah, there is.
Okay, so you can do it that way. Well, that's important for residents, anybody watching this, to know that they can look at it that way.
Carve out some time.
It's likely.
That passionate watching this, that they will take the time.
This is just the Darien data. Think about the statewide data. I mean, I just pulled out the Darien data here for a year, but think about the statewide data, and then they have an intro and an explanation. I mean, it's a lot.
It's a lot of information.
Yeah.
And then where do you think, I like where you're going with looking at the random Darien scenario. Where do you see that going? Is that something you can come back to us on, or you'll address at a future meeting?
We'll come back to you, actually. We're gonna start really
We
kind
haven't
of
really
fleshing
had
it out
it, yeah.
next meeting. But it's exciting stuff. It's, using real life observations.
We just discussed it, I
rather
think,
than
two weeks ago, right?
rather than kind of estimating populations, right?
Well,
which is
that'd be
not
great. I'd love to come back to it if you were all going to address it at one of your meetings, to come back.
I think it may be on the agenda for the next meeting.
It may be, and let me give a shout out to Sergeant Jeremiah Johnson as well. He is our data type person. Again, high quality police department, high quality officers. We have a PhD here bringing this program forward for us as lay folks that we can understand it, right, and put it into play. So we have a PhD working here that this is what he does in his other job, or his, this is what he does. So.
Yeah, we discussed the idea 2 weeks ago, probably. We have not received a presentation exactly what it is, but we will definitely, I think it will be...
Whatever appropriate, whatever time.
We will. Technology. Kevin, you want to talk about technology?
We've gone in the past 37 years from, like the chief said, a pen and paper to highly technical mobile digital computing in our both police cars and actually on the bodies of our police officers. This all needs to be, in some cases, highly available, redundant backups. It needs to be mobile and rugged, and these platforms need to be secure and meet the standards and maintained to the FBI's criminal justice, the standards that the government puts out. I'll name off a couple of just our critical systems to give you a flavor for how much technology the department is using today when we talk about our digital fingerprinting, when we go into our incident report creation, both on our the laptops that the guys have in the cars to the stations we have here, traffic collision data reporting, which is going to tie into other data projects that we're looking to do that we just spoke about. The technology that are in our cars, whether they're the in-car mobile data terminals that are hooked up to high-speed cellular connections, our digital transmission platforms in the vehicles. We have multiple digital and analog backup radio systems that need to be maintained and have high availability. Our records management systems, even down to the fairly significant building management systems we have here to manage the building. And if we have to go to CALIA, that's actually a large part of some of the things that we have to maintain and present a plan for. Our fleet management system and software, our body-worn cameras and our dash cameras, the electrical data systems that are in our tasers, and we're actually going to start putting that type of system on the holsters of the officers' firearms, which we talked about a little while ago. Our training database, our law enforcement computer system, the JUDORSO website, firearms database, Code Red, which is the mass communication system, our emergency management systems and software, and the background criminal detective things that the chief was talking about earlier, our restraining and protective order registry. So all of those things are currently being essentially at this point a one-man shop.
It's not even
half a man in-house.
Yeah.
And IT from Board of Ed does give us their best effort. Today I had IT, I needed to send out a Zoom meeting request for Fairfield County Chiefs of Police, and it wouldn't send. So I never did get it out today because it's beyond my expertise to try to fix why it won't send that. TJ Moore was one of our field services sergeants. He probably should be in the data field, but he loves being a police officer. But we have a full-time subject matter expert who I think this board has probably heard me say before. He knows as much or more than some of the service technicians for the vendors that sell us their product. That's how good he is. And if we lost him tomorrow, there's going to be issues that we're not going to be able to correct in short order when things go south.
A lot of these
And by the way,
things-
that's not his job.
That's not his job.
To be clear, he is...
So it's a hard distinction, thank you.
Yeah, no, I mean, it was not like, oh, we have somebody and we've identified because we ordered, dispatch. I mean, he is a sergeant and he does this, I wouldn't say in his spare time, but he is nice to provide this service to his fellow officers and...
And we have things that no one else in the state of Connecticut has because of his ability to code software and to write these interfaces, to have these disparate programs work together. And we're the envy of Connecticut police departments as far as connectivity of multiple platforms because no one else has this.
And many of these systems are not solely used by the police department, right? They're shared amongst the emergency management function, the police department, EMS, and fire, right?
So I think-
That's something.
I was going to say, I think we would anticipate potentially asking the selectmen, in the next budget, maybe the next budget cycle, for a full-time professional to handle IT, but a shared resource with the fire departments, other emergency services here as well.
Well, and I'd like to follow that this issue isn't limited to the police department or the fire departments. You said it well, we get the best effort from the professionals associated with the area and public schools, but I've had the same issues that you've had, and in our digital virtual world, when you have a problem, it can't be solved in a timely basis with the model that we have in place right now. So, we're all evolving. Technology is evolving at a rapid pace. And I think that, we should be looking collectively for the department and for the town about how we can enhance our technology systems and support personnel.
And all those things are not to mention the kind of exciting things that we've talked about before, and the enhanced dispatch E911, right? Being able to send text messages. The middleware that sits in that artificial intelligence, which kind of gathers and looks at that software, at that, and then all the technology that's used to then send it out to the field. Those are just three off the top of my head of things that are going to require some high technical intelligence to integrate into our system.
As we talk technology, Commissioner Hufford addressed this, I think 2 meetings ago, but the Darien Foundation just gave us a grant of $111,000, which was hugely appreciated by the commission, the command staff, and the department in general. So just want to say thank you again to them.
Yeah.
Kind of, I know this is maybe apples and oranges comparison, but the city of Los Angeles has 9,000 police officers that they had equipped with body cameras. They had to immediately hire 200 full-time technicians who do nothing else but body camera collating, downloading, and cataloging. 200 in one fell swoop. They had at 40 hours a week, and that's all 200 employees do. So if you roll out the numbers, we need somebody that can do body cameras, more than an hour a day. Again, I just don't want to get caught short, and I think moving forward, as we get more and more in the digital world with people who are coming up after me, and we really want to be in the position where, and if you call, let's call it what it is. If we call the Board of Ed IT guy at 2 o'clock in the morning, there's no guarantee that anyone's answering the phone. Probably not answering the phone, right? And TJ Moore, to his credit, he will answer the phone.
He answers emails at that point.
So right now, we're in a position where we manage it. If we didn't,
You're saying before there's no bench, you referred to that concept that applies to the entire police force. Right now, from an IT perspective, you've got one very talented individual who's multifaceted, but there is no bench.
yeah, I'm not sure without him that we would have half the technology that we're running now, including our mobile data terminals or anything that we didn't have to have. I'm not sure that we would have that. He wrote the code that no one else has that allows our officers now, without having to come in on overtime and catalog their body camera footage, which most other departments do. You come at the end of your shift, you sit down, you plug it in, you put your case numbers in, and you get 15 or 20 minutes worth of overtime. With his protocol and his code writing, the officer comes in, snaps it in the dock, and goes home. Adios. And it all magically downloads to right where it's supposed to be with no human intervention. And it's more accurate than the officers doing it themselves, I guarantee you, because sometimes I have to do it myself. And that's the kind of level that we're getting from him.
You pay him enough?
Well, I'm not sure if say he retired and went into that realm, I'm not sure we could afford him. That's what kind of demand that I think he would be in this exact arena across the state and the country.
And those types of things, to have the vision and the foresight to identify opportunity, to leverage and harness technology, those are the kinds of things that in my head I envision a technology officer to do. Well beyond I can't get the Zoom.
Yeah, exactly.
It's like fairly low-level technical people can help you figure that out, right? I'm thinking about somebody that's got the vision and the ability to understand the intricate, complicated systems, help plan a strategy, and keep us ahead of I'll call it the decay curve of technology, where stuff becomes obsolete so quickly.
Well, and somebody who, not all technology people are created equal. He clearly deals, Kevin just read off the umpteen things that are very specific to the, police work, fingerprinting things. It would be nice to have somebody who could think forward, but also that we could identify as not just a computer person, but somebody who really knows and can study our needs and systems. And, obviously we get that with our sergeant because he's here and he's an officer, but replacing him with just, another techie person probably doesn't get us all the way there. We really need to identify the skill set for all.
Sounds like systems are highly specialized, so
they are.
He brings a lot more.
Brings a lot to the table, and
being able to, manage the technology.
A lot of the hard and fast data that's provided to the Board of Selectmen in either quarterly reports or annual reports or in budget requests, I just don't magically come out with our hard and fast overtime number that I think we need. That's a subject of that data analysis. He brings me, these things with crossing, charts, and now I need, in English, I need why we need what we need and why we think this is an accurate and true number of what we need to expend on overtime. That's a product of his programs that he writes. He brings me the finished product. If I don't have that in the next budget cycle, I have to find someone who can do that, because I would be with a pen and paper trying to figure it out day by day, and he can give it to me usually in a day or two. So I don't want to make his head too big, but he is a subject matter expert.
We're really not talking about one individual either when we're looking at how to develop the best practice technology and information system for municipal government. We're really talking about beginning a new department that has someone who can drive the vision, and then folks that can actually implement.
And security, and as we get hacked, and there's lots of things we should be thinking about, and we're thinking about it, but we can't. You need an IT department or a technology department for really thinking about the big things, for some big scary things. Okay, we're on the same page there, definitely. The last question on here was a mission statement for the police commission and goals and objectives. We obviously are a town department. We operate somewhat differently than other boards and commissions. So I wasn't really sure as I thought about what would be different in a mission statement than what was listed in the town charter as...
I think when I wrote that information wasn't yet on the website.
Oh, okay.
The question was, when I first looked, I didn't see anything like that. I tried to look, I found the history and how many meetings there have been and other types of things like that. But that other data, and including some of the more detailed data on the individual divisions and everything like that, I believe that that's been updated already, so that was on my, thank you guys for doing that anyway.
Yeah, we definitely, and I say this not necessarily answering your question, but for anyone listening, we added a lot of things to the website this year with answering questions that we've gotten, some of the meetings we've had with people, the police department mission statement, a statement from the chief of police. So I think over the last few months, we've been populating the website. So if people have questions, our hiring practices, answering the Aid That Can't Wait questions that we're circulating in the Black Lives Matter. So I think if there's anything that the selectmen would like to see us add, or if anyone in the public is looking for information on the police commission or the police department that's not there, but I think it's a little more up-to-date and complete than it was 6 months ago. So hopefully we're good there. Well, that was all the questions that you had submitted to us ahead of time. So I don't know if there's anything else, any of the Board of Selectmen. Again, this isn't our last chance, but
Certainly want my board to ask any questions, but just to augment what you said about how your work is guided. Like the rest of the town departments, we're guided by the charter. State statute certainly enables everything that we do, but unique to you are the general orders that are approved by the police commission. So that, I think that's one area of administrative guidance and framework that most departments don't have that you do have. So, that really helps to put into focus really your mission and how to accomplish that.
indeed.
Any other board questions on police matters today? No?
Thank you.
We really appreciate you allowing us to take a generous amount of time with the commission and your command staff today. I know we have many things to work on together over the coming months as we develop a budget, and we look forward to that partnership.
No, we appreciate all of you coming. It's always great. And again, I think we're lucky that we see you and work with you, independent of these meetings, but it is nice to formally gather at least periodically. So appreciate you taking the time too. With that, we have one last thing, which is when is our next meeting? We go into the holiday season, so what is today, the 5th? The 19th? We either go for the 19th, which is 2 weeks, or next Thursday is Thanksgiving, or December 3rd.
Do we want to keep the 19th?
I'm fine with 19th if you guys
Would that work for everybody?
Yeah.
Chief?
I'm always available.
Okay, so Thursday, 4 p.m. here on November 19th will be our next meeting. With that, we are adjourned.